And a mere 47 minutes later, alright. So now the recovery drive is done. I realize I'm not showing you what I'm doing on the screen. Nor am I sure I can do this one-handed, but I will try. Dear viewer. Alright, and it is very important that you label your thumb drives with the data they contain, or you will be sad. So, additional setup steps required. The way this computer will be configured I'm going to have a partition that's shared between Windows and Linux for transferring files back and forth. It appears that this entire area is meant to be taken up by ads. That is, everything that is grayed out will be auto-filled with advertisements. Not necessarily the most thrilled about how Windows 11 is developing. Anyway, for a shared partition between both Windows and Linux, it's easiest to turn off BitLocker. I'm sure there's a way to do it while enabling BitLocker, but that it's easier if you turn it off. Like, theoretically, it should be possible to support encryption and decryption from two different operating systems simultaneously for a shared memory area, but I am not doing anything that requires that level of security. And also, this operating system is already going to be, well, I should operate under the assumption that it is sending telemetry data to Microsoft. Even though I have turned that option off in the settings, it's usually a safe bet that future updates, which I cannot control, will change the device settings in ways that I cannot predict unless I go through every setting in detail after each system update, which becomes burdensome. So yeah, that is why Linux is being installed on this computer, dear viewer. I don't think it's wise to start messing around with drive partitions until after this decryption process has completed, but it seems to be going more quickly than making a backup disk, which is nice. Alright, device encryption is off. Oh yeah, wouldn't want unauthorized access. Okay, so then the next step is to go to disk management. And here we can see 3 partitions. This is the boot partition on the left. This is the C drive. This is Windows' own recovery partition. Now we're going to carve some space out of this where 3 different partitions can live. There will need to be one that's shared, that acts as if it were a constantly plugged-in thumb drive, say, that both Windows and Linux can access, so that you can transfer files back and forth between the two. And there will be one that will be swap. The swap partition will pretend like it's extra RAM from Linux's perspective. So I'm going to set it up so that it kind of is like this computer has 64 gigabytes of RAM. And then the remainder will be Linux main memory, Why, yes, it is late at night, dear viewer. Funny you should ask. So to do that, we start by shrinking this volume. It'll take a while to figure out how much it can be shrunk by. I'm going to leave Windows with 200 gigs. Hopefully, I do not regret that in the future. We shall see. Okay, so now we have obtained 243.95 gigabytes of unallocated space. And we right-click and select New Simple Volume. New Simple Volume Wizard. Okay, so first will be shared. So in computers, a gigabyte is not exactly 1,000 megabytes. It's 1,024 megabytes. If you're a hard drive manufacturer, it's exactly 1,000, because that makes the numbers on the drive look bigger. But if I want an actual 20 gigabyte space, and I'm specifying in megabytes, then I need 20,480 megabytes. Okay, now this is going to be shared between Windows and Linux, so I'm giving it drive letter D. And I will let the partition wizard format this. So now Windows says, hey, you've plugged in a new thing, drive D, which will be the shared folder. Now it's time to assign swap space. And so I have 16 gigabytes of RAM in this computer. So I need to assign another 48 gigabytes of memory as swap space for it to pretend that it has 64 gigabytes of RAM total. So in megabytes, that's 49,152. Yes, all critical computer setup things should be done late at night, dear viewer. This is how you do them. Now, because this will be swap space, we're not going to give it a drive letter or drive path, and we also don't need to format it. So from Windows perspective, this is a raw basic data partition, and then this is what's left over for Linux to live on. So that will also be whatever's left over. No drive letter or path. Do not format. Okay, great. So when we install Linux, the root partition for Linux will be here. This will be swap. This will be a partition that Linux mounts and is shared between the two operating systems. Now let's see if we can get into the BIOS. So now it's finally time to take our Linux Mint boot disk that we made earlier. And I'm pretty sure I have to change BIOS settings to get this to work properly, but just for funsies, I'm going to try booting into the Linux Mint install disk without doing anything first. So we shut down, and then you boot the computer and try to press F2 really quickly. On some computers it's escape. On this one I believe BIOS settings are accessed through F2. Yes, they are. Okay, so this beautiful screen is the BIOS, the basic input-output system, and you navigate with the arrow keys. So boot, boot manager, USB device. If we highlight that, okay, so I am in the wrong section here. This is the BIOS itself, and we may need to change settings in it later, but this is not where I would find boot device options. So I press the power button again, and then we try booting up again. I believe escape might get us where we're trying to go. Let us find out. No, I was too slow. This is the happy Windows booting. You know, alright, booting again. F2 is the BIOS. I'm just going to change the boot order for now. So, boot order priorities. Boot option number 1, if you press enter, you can change what boot option number 1 is, and I will make it the USB device. So now, when this thing boots up, it's going to try to boot from here. Then I use the right arrow key to navigate to save and exit. Select Save Changes and Exit with Enter. Alright. Okay, so now I have booted into Grub. This might be a little hard to see, it's also rotated clockwise. But the options are Start Linux Mint, one moment. Start Linux Mint in compatibility mode, OEM install, that wipes everything. Boot from next volume, firmware settings, memory test. So I want to just start Linux Mint 22.3 Cinnamon 64-bit. So I highlight that option and press enter. Okay. And there is just the loveliest Linux Mint logo that probably isn't going to show up properly, but that's okay. That is just how this game is going to be played, dear viewer. That looks a little Linux Mintier. Maybe not. Yes, these are important things to be doing in the middle of the night, dear viewer. Important things. Now, this takes a while to boot when doing this because it's actually booting off of this thumb drive There we go. Still learning my camera settings. So you can see the beautiful Linux Mint logo, which actually should be rotated 90 degrees clockwise, but so it goes. That's because the display of this thing tells Linux that it tells it that up is that way. And you can change that in the display settings once you've installed, but I've had the best luck just doing the install with it rotated 90 degrees and then fixing it once it's installed. I do hope these instructions are useful to you. For lo, I am staying up late into the night in order to craft them. And, I hope that the manner in which I am spending my time in existence is ultimately beneficial to all others. Otherwise, what am I even doing here? Okay, so here, Linux Mint home screen. Again, everything is rotated counterclockwise 90 degrees, which can make navigating a little tricky, but I want to go to this icon, which is Install Linux Mint. Double click on it. Wait for the data to make its way over the pipeline. You get a little beach ball logo right there, indicating that it is thinking in place of your mouse cursor. Just out of idle curiosity. Yes, it seems that my knife work has corrected the issue with the power light, charging indicator light. Okay, so then you select language. There are many options. You know, pick your favorite language. Or one that suits you, and then click continue. Keyboard layout, English US, continue. For now, I'm going to skip connecting to a Wi-Fi network. This lets you select installation of multimedia codecs. You will want those. And I am not going to configure secure boot. But yeah, the CHUWI Minibook series, I really like it. I've owned the Minibook X N150 for about 3 years, and I've been putting it through its paces, carrying it in a backpack back and forth, and unintentionally dropping it and kicking it around. And it's held up really well. And it seems like the CHUWI Minibook X N150 is cut from the same cloth. It is physically durable and seems well constructed to me in well constructed in the sense that I expect it to be usable as a computer for a long period of time if you find yourself obtaining one. Alright, and then here we can pick where Linux Mint is getting installed. You can install it alongside Windows Boot Manager, you can erase the disk and install Linux Mint, or you can do something else, which is what I am choosing. So having chosen something else, I'm going to continue, and then here we can see the hard drive partitions that we created before. So this is where Windows lives. This is going to be shared. We'll get to that later. This one is going to be swap. And I'm differentiating these by size. So if I right click on the one and select change, use as swap, and then I hit OK. Okay, so I've defined one partition as swap, this one, and then this is going to be where Linux lives. So I right click, select change, and then use the partition as an ext4 journaling file system, and for this I will need to format it, and it's going to be mounted as just the slash, which is root, and then press OK, and then install now, which is this button. And then it warns me, if you continue, the shown modifications will be written to disk. In the event of problems, you could, or you could create other changes. Warning, you are making changes to the disk, which is why we made the recovery disk in case everything goes horribly wrong somehow. Alright, and then where are you? Choose a location. I'll just tell it I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, which is not quite right, but within the same time zone. Then hit continue. Then you get to name yourself and computer. And then here you can enter a password. If you want to use a horribly insecure password, which is what I usually prefer to do, it's very easy to enter it at this point, but later if you want to change your system from a secure to an insecure password, it complains at you a lot. So you enter the password in both fields. And then press continue. And now I should be seeing an installation dialog, which I am. Very blurry. Welcome and thank you for choosing Linux Mint. This presentation offers you an overview of the system which is being installed on your computer. So now you should be seeing a blinking light on your thumb drive, your installation media, and then and yes, it is still rotated. We will fix that after the installation process has actually finished. I feel like I might have been a bit more lively the first time that I made a series about this, but I also didn't let it run so late into the evening. But so it goes, you know. I'm just documenting this because if you, dear viewer, decided to obtain this particular laptop, I think you would find it durable and well suited for your purposes, and also inexpensive. And the Windows operating system I appreciate the degree of flexibility and customization that is present in Linux, and I like Linux Mint in particular for its ease of use and comparative simplicity. I really like the whole being able to choose when my computer updates and which updates it installs, rather than it, from my perspective, randomly deciding to update and then changing all of the settings that I've configured. I appreciate the lack of advertisements. Also, most recently, I learned that Linux Mint 22.0, at least, this is 22.3, I haven't played around with it yet, but Linux Mint 22.0, at least, if I connect it to a printer, it will immediately recognize the printer. I did not have to play with drivers at all for a somewhat older Brother HD something laser printer. I simply plugged it in and it worked, whereas on Windows it was necessary to hunt down and install driver files. So we have now reached the point where it seems like Linux Mint is more of a user-friendly experience than Windows, and it is not constantly trying to advertise to me. The only reason that I'm leaving Windows on this computer at all is because it's a prerequisite for taking online tests that require that you install what is effectively spyware onto your computer. Wow, you could manage your photos. Anyway, this process continues for a while. That bar slowly fills. And then after this, there will be some housekeeping steps. Tweaking the system, making sure it works properly. As always, I do appreciate the time which you, dear viewer, are choosing to spend with me on this. From my perspective, it's the middle of the night and I'm talking to a rectangular object that I'm holding in my hand and pointing at a different screen, but Alright, so once the installation has completed, you will see a message like this one in the language of your choosing, and it offers you the option to continue testing or to restart now. And I would like to restart now. And then it should prompt me to remove the installation medium, then press enter, which it is now. So then, hey, guess what the next steps are? If you guessed removing the installation medium and pressing enter, then you are right. Wow, this is a grippy USB port, which is good. I presume most of you will be using this with two hands, and so the security of the port is an advantage. But alright, so I removed it, the installation media, this. Then I press enter. Now, I am going to start pressing F2 because I need to go back into the BIOS. So the way I got it to boot from the thumb drive was by changing the boot order. Under boot, you'll recall that you navigate left and right with the arrows. So I actually want boot option number 3 to be the USB device again, the way that it was. Boot option number 1 should be the hard disk. Save changes and exit, which is selected by default, so you just press enter. Save configuration and exit, yes. Okay, so now it should boot up and show me Grub, the Grand Unified Bootloader. But it will not do this. It's going to boot straight to Windows. And this was somewhat frustrating the first time that I encountered it, but there is a correction to this.